left, right.
Yo, what's up? Thank you for joining us for this episode of SipTalk. Looking forward to sharing with you a couple of cocktails. I invite you to join us with a cocktail of your own if you are drinking and listening to us or watching us. Let me know you're drinking. See you on the other end. This is SipTalk. Grab a drink and enjoy.
Of course, it's good.
Cheers.
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 All right, we are live. Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, live across the board. This is episode 82 of SipTalk. Today, I am joined by James, the Bosnator Boswell, accountant extraordinaire, philosopher, professional referee, and accountant. He's in Charleston, South Carolina. And by David Boswell, the political scientist, who is in Sacramento, California.
Our West Coast correspondent.
Our West Coast correspondent. How's everything over there on the West Coast, David?
It's pretty chill. It's pretty nice. Yeah.
Yeah, we
Got
already
a lot going on right now.
we already thought so. So we're running a little late tonight because James got lost in a song.
That was 2 minutes. Well, how about the 10 minutes it took you to figure out how to press the right buttons to go live?
Very true. We got a new setup. Hopefully the audio is decent. I haven't heard any complaints lately, but we're glad you've joined us. And if you're not here, well, you're missing the message. We got a few things to talk about. We got to talk about Dr. Seuss. We got to talk about tolerance and oversensitive people. I want to dive a little more into your home purchase, James, and the steps that you've taken so far, the following steps, what that process is like. But I want to get started with what you guys are listening to currently, because, James, you get lost in a song. It sounds very kind of dreamy and romantic.
No, it was more just like I was practicing guitar and I forgot what time it was.
Still dreamy and romantic. So what were you listening to, and what are you guys listening to currently?
Well, I was playing some Kings of Leon and
Nice.
Dandy Warhols, also the Shins.
And very nice, very cool. All of those are great bands. I think I've seen Kings of Leon live. The Shins would be very cool to see live. The Dandy Warhols, I don't think I would be impressed by going to the concert. I think they have great music, but I don't know that they can put on a show. Obviously I wouldn't know. I haven't been to a concert by them. But Kings of Leon, one hell of a show. And David, what's in your music lineup right now?
Right now, it's kind of the standards for me. Lots of Vampire Weekend, a band that James actually turned me on to, Superorganism, who is a really, really fun group. And lastly, actually been kind of something of a Lorde kick lately.
Really?
She's really pretty good. I sent some to James. Not everything was a hit with him, but their hand feels like, no, I'll appreciate it.
Yeah, there's some catchy tunes that she writes.
I went to a Lorde concert. It's a sad story. I'll save it for another time or a few more drinks. But sad story. But I went to a Lorde concert in has to be 2013. But Lorde is a great band. Does she have anything new?
She came out with her album Melodrama. I think that was like 17. I picked up a couple of her
17, yeah,
maybe
couple of her records, and then the last band that I'll plug is one of James and our favorites, Sleeper Agent, band out of Ohio. They're not together anymore, but they did put out 2 amazing albums, and strongly recommend.
Very cool, very cool. Let me share what I've been listening to, and I'm gonna crack a drink here. I recently added a Likey Lee album to my. I was watching a movie and I Shazammed one of the songs. So I've been listening to this album by Likey Lee, Lykke.
I've heard of her.
And then I didn't realize today was the last day for one of our interns, and I usually kind of I know when their last day is. We usually go out and we have lunch or something like that, but I completely missed it. It's a Thursday. Usually a last day is like a Friday. But we didn't get to do anything, but he brought me a gift, which was very generous. And he brought me a record by the Chemical Brothers, which I wasn't sure at first. The band didn't ring a bell, but very cool album artwork. And I opened it up and started to look at some of the songs, and I know a whole bunch of these songs. Unfortunately, the record player in my office wasn't hooked up, so I'm going to have to get this set up, get some speakers bumping in the office, and listen to some Chemical Brothers.
I recommend the Salmon Dance by the Chemical Brothers.
It's almost like an electric music, electronical music,
I saw them the first time in American Ultra. They play basically the closing song when they have the big showdown.
It's a
Perfect
great
choice.
And then I've been listening to a little My Morning Jacket and also the Hold Steady. You guys listen to the Hold Steady? I think you would know the music.
I've not heard of the Hold Steady.
Oh, you got it.
I've heard them.
You got to listen to it. It's almost like I wouldn't say he's speaking and not singing, but it's more along the lines of like speaking and not singing. I don't know how you put it, but it's cool. What are you drinking down there in the Low Country, James?
I'm keeping it light with Bush Ice again. I might move on to a glass of Glenlivet 15. Casey bought some for himself to celebrate finally having the apartment to himself. As
with you,
yeah, but
Casey is the third of the Boswell brothers. Yeah. The first two are featured above and below me, or left and right of me if you're listening in stereo. So the roommate moved out, and Casey hated the roommate, I'm guessing. So he bought a bottle to celebrate.
Pretty much.
Glenlivet 15.
Yeah, he said it was really good. I haven't had a chance to sip it yet because he bought it on Monday, and I was super hungover Monday, so I didn't want to have anything to drink.
I know, yeah. Very cool, David. How are we going to describe California? Sunny California. It's still sunny out there right now, right?
Still sunny out here.
You're in a different time zone.
I am.
Yeah, California usually is in a different time zone than New York and South Carolina.
Well, it is for 3 hours until it isn't.
Well, then it is if you.
Well, it depends on when you're measuring it.
What are you drinking?
I'm drinking a good old standard Evan Williams.
Evan Williams in a shaker glass. Is that a shaker? Is that part of a shaker?
It's like one of those like those steel tumblers. I think it's a rocks tumbler. I think they classified as.
So very cool. I've been
Keeps nice and cold.
I've been on a little kick with these Negronis, and I finished the last of the Campari, and
a good job. You killed a bottle.
And vermouth, well, over a long period of time. But this morning, in between, so I'm in the basement here, and there's a bunch of boxes with bottles in them, and I found another almost empty bottle of Campari and some vermouth. So I'm gonna finish off this bottle of Campari and get us moving here.
I thought you were gonna say that you finished it off this morning.
No, I thought I was gonna have a heart attack this morning. I had this new pre-workout. And it was like 7:30 in the morning. I thought my heart was going to explode. So look, James, we were talking a little before we jumped on air, and we were talking about kind of acceptance and tolerance and
a favorite topic of yours.
Yeah, because it's just bullshit. Like, I'm in New York, so I see a lot of diversity, and you just see a lot more shit than you do when you're not exposed to as many people. And I've been, dealt my fair share of bullshit, but I feel like I just kind of put it behind me and move on. Whereas now we're throwing fucking Dr. Seuss, All
right. So this is where you're getting the news story wrong.
Well, I don't know what's going on with Dr. Seuss. I just know that we're getting rid of it now because Dr.
No,
Seuss.
it's not a we. First of all, it's not a we. Second of all, it's of like however many dozens of books and stories he wrote, it's 6 and they're all super like obscure. 3, the person or people who made the decision to no longer publish the specific works were the people who are in charge of the Dr. Seuss estate. This is not like some outside force coming in and saying, we don't want Dr. Seuss on the bookshelves anymore. This
Dr.
is the
Seuss
people
saying.
who are literally in charge of Dr. Seuss's legacy saying, we don't think it's right to publish these books anymore. The reason for that is that they have really clearly racist caricatures in them, which may have been acceptable in the 40s. But when we look at it now, just like how if you look at some like the Looney Tunes from the 40s or some of the Disney cartoons from the 40s, and you're just like, holy shit, I can't believe that you guys got away with that or thought that that was appropriate. Like the eyes that we have now are not the eyes that we had 80 years ago. So this is not Dr. Seuss being canceled by anybody other than, well, Dr. Seuss's trustees. So they're self-censoring on this because they don't feel that it is appropriate or an accurate representation of what he stood for.
Well, he did write them, right?
Right, but it's one of those ones where in today's context, you can look at it and say, this really comes off badly. It might not have come off badly at the time, but it does now. And so they say, look, we would just rather not have this be considered really part of his public legacy. Yes, we acknowledge that it happened, but we're not going to continue to advertise it and promulgate it.
But is this so basically is Dr. Seuss going away, or this is just a couple of his more obscure books that we're going to pull out of publication?
Out of however many books he published, it's like 5 or 6 of them. And they're all ones that, like, when I heard like a few of them, I was like, I've never even read that one. So they're not well known.
I mean, as you know, I have a terrible memory, but I wouldn't remember a single book that I've read by Dr. Seuss. At least I couldn't recall the title. If you threw one out there, maybe I'd say, yeah, I know that one.
Well,
but
some of them are pretty tough reads. So
anything that takes a lot of time and
like they're not getting rid of One Fish, Two Fish, or Hop on Pop. So like your reading level is preserved.
All right, thank God. Yeah, I don't know. That's getting rid of stuff that has happened in the past. I don't. Now that you tell me what happened with Dr. Seuss, I don't feel so bad about it. Have you heard this thing about Eminem?
What about?
I don't know. Something.
The green one or the red one?
Something's going on with Eminem.
Or the white one?
Oh, speaking of the green M&M, green M&M is the lady M&M. So,
Yeah.
Mr. Potato Head, he's got the arms. You can take his face off. This guy. Apparently, now it's just potato. And they're getting rid of the Mr. and the Mrs. It's just potato, is my understanding.
Okay.
And also...
Who cares?
I don't know.
Conservatives.
Someone
They're furious.
Someone in corporate, yeah, and the conservatives are very mad about this.
But why? Like, what's to be upset about?
I think it was like Demi Lovato or somebody from pop culture said that gender reveal parties are transphobic or something along those lines.
That's also stupid.
Well, I mean, if you break it down, you're like, oh, interesting point.
The woman who came up with it, who has since said she seriously regrets and wish people would stop, her child is non-conforming, and they did a gender reveal party. So I can understand from that standpoint of,
yeah,
I agree that calling it transphobic, I think gender reveal parties are a lot stupider for much better reasons.
Yeah, like. Pick the winning argument here.
Last couple of months, you've had last 2 weeks, you had a expectant father die because the improvised explosive that they're doing blew up in the garage and killed him, seriously injured his buddy. You had a cannon explode in the last 2 months, killing another couple of people. You've got the fire on the border in the desert caused by a border patrol agent doing a gender reveal party, ended up being like a 30-acre fire.
So there's a lot of
way worse than that. There was like a huge wildfire that caused like millions of dollars in damage. And I just have to think, whenever like these accidents happen with the gender reveal party, like why couldn't they have done this before they reproduced?
That's actually the exact thought. That's the exact thought that went through my head before David went on his bullet points of everything that happened in the recent past, which is wild. That's
It's tragic, but
well, it's very.
But is it?
No, it is. It's very sad if you take it instant. Now, if you take it from our perspective, this far removed, it is very funny. And I mean, it is.
It's like getting shot in the leg.
It's
hard. That is so growing on me.
One of the things I wanted to touch on is if you say something bad or you do something bad, and then a year later or an hour later or 2 decades later you feel bad about it and you ask for forgiveness, does that matter?
Yeah.
Depending on what you've done and depending how long it's been, if you do something like sexual harassment, what's the forgivable period, and then should you still be lambasted or crucified?
Well, the alternative is just pure nihilism. If you can't ever make up for something you've done wrong, then what's the point in ever trying to? There has to be a point at some point where you might still have that scarlet A letter for adulterer or abuser or sexual harasser, but you've seen some people that have been able to rehabilitate their images. Louis C.K. tried and did it about as poorly as you could. So I wouldn't use him as a shocking example of that.
As a comedian, so I mean, but
James, can you think of any ideas, Justin?
Well, I
People
heard
that have rebuilt their image.
Sexual resuscitation of their image after. Let's go with Me Too movement, a sexual harassment issue.
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah,
I like how you just pulled that out of your back pocket, literally out of your front pocket, like it was just there. Well, I don't know anything about this.
So this would have been probably 2003 and 2004 when Schwarzenegger was running for governor in California. There were a whole bunch of allegations about sexual harassment and adultery committed by him. I don't remember if they were true. They probably were, but I don't know. But
I mean, the guy was Mr. like Olympia.
Yeah, and
7 years in a row.
But I think that to a large degree, he kind of owned up to it and said, like, that I'm sorry for what I did, and he's rehabilitated his image to being generally pretty wholesome and positive when he speaks publicly.
I like Schwarzenegger. I think everything I know about him. I think the funny thing is what you just brought up. There's a movie called Pumping Iron. It's a documentary about Arnold Schwarzenegger in like the 70s, basically competing against Lou Ferrigno. And there's a line in the movie where he's like, "Oh yeah, I am pumping all day in the gym, and it releases the endorphins, and it is like coming. And then I just go home, and I am fucking a lot these days. So I am just coming 24/7." Which, and now, was he the governor of California?
Yeah.
Yeah. For how long?
2 terms? 1 term?
A while, right? And he was a guy
he won the election after they did the recall.
Jerry Brown.
Yeah.
But I think he's a pretty intelligent guy. He's pretty worldly. I imagine he's well traveled. So, I mean, I'm cool with that.
I've seen a couple of his messages over the last year or so, and like one of them is he constantly likes to talk against the concept of the self-made man, where no matter how successful you are, you have to recognize that other people helped you get there, and it wasn't all you.
I think that's I think that's a really good concept.
He made a video right after the Capitol insurrection talking about his experiences in Austria shortly after World War II and what he saw as the kind of relics of fascism and what they do to the people who are a part of it, and kind of calling for a way of healing and moving on and rejecting what we all saw in DC that day. And I would recommend anyone to watch the video, because it's a really personal message, but spoken really well about why it's important to fight against those forces. I don't want to go into too much more detail because it's his video, not mine.
Yeah, fair enough. We just got a comment on TikTok saying he had a child with the maid.
Yep, just graduated last 2 years. He went to the graduation. Everything's
Oh, the child,
pretty
the child
happy there.
graduate, the
Yep.
child graduate. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, he went. He's in his life.
my thinking is like, we all, at the end of the day, we're all animals, and I don't know. When you're super famous, you have a lot of extra temptation, and it's a difficult role to fill.
So that's why I use him as an example of someone who was able to rehabilitate his image, because instead of running away from what he did and trying to diminish his responsibility, he said, yeah, this happened, and I'm not making excuses for it. I can do better, and I will try to.
Well, I think a lot of PR screws up there. I think a lot of people have to own their shit. I think, who's the guy I listen to a lot of? Simon Sinek. You know who this guy is? He's more or less a motivational speaker, but almost more of like a corporate speaker about how to kind of the modality you want in your company and how you want to train people and build up your employees and things like that. But what he said was, Tiger Woods let us down because everybody thought he was the golden boy, the good guy. And when everybody found out that he had an affair or whatever it was, it completely shattered his image. But had Tiger Woods played the bad boy up and ran with it, he wouldn't have taken that big hit in ratings or being hated across the board. He could have just owned it. And there's a lot of bad boy type popular icons that own that message.
You don't even have to be the bad boy to do this. Like, look at Derek Jeter when he was in New York City. So he was out pretty much every single weekend hooking up with a different insanely attractive chick, to the point where his personal assistant had gift bags for the women that he would bring over. I'm not making this up. You can look this up. You can do the research for yourself.
Like Plan B and some jewelry or what?
Oh God knows what.
I mean,
but he didn't hide from what he did, and anybody that went and talked to him at a bar or whatever, like, they knew what they were signing up for. He didn't pretend like it was something else, and he never forced himself on anybody. It was everybody went into the situation willingly. So it's, if you are super famous and you want to just hook up all the time or whatever, just be honest about it and don't get married.
Fair enough. Yeah. Or, it just needs to be very explicit kind of what you're doing. And it's difficult being in I wouldn't know, but, being in this general public spotlight, just people dissecting your life. I can only imagine being, and then when there's a scandal or a perceived scandal, knowing when to speak out and what to say, I imagine being very difficult. Whose email is that? Is that email? That noise?
It's not coming from me.
Oh, it's not coming from me. Oh, must be coming from California.
Must be in the future.
All right, so let's see what else I got.
Well, real quick, were there any after the fact comments on our parenting?
Yeah, well, there were some. I lost some actually.
How do you lose comments?
What's that? Well, I'm really bad with social media. Sometimes I'm like really in tune with it, but sometimes I just don't kind of digest any of it, which is really bad. I try to get in and I answer all the DMs and messages, but I'm really bad with kind of keeping up. And we got a few cheers. James, I really think you should hit that scotch. I think that'd probably be a really good idea.
Sure, I could go for a glass.
Why not?
I'll be back in 30 to 60 seconds.
All right. As James leaves the room to beat up his youngest brother,
steal his scotch, and threaten him with not an apartment or the house that they're going to move into. Say, this is what you got to deal with.
I love the brotherly dynamic. Obviously, we grew up kind of together, but it's weird how that dynamic changes as you grow up and you spread apart. I know that between my sister and I, but for the most part, the dynamic is still very similar between the three of you brothers, which I think is very interesting. And I feel bad for the youngest brother.
James' dynamic hasn't really changed much since he went to college.
Well, no, your age difference, the two of you guys, wasn't as wide as your guys with the youngest brother. So,
Right.
youngest brother definitely got, it was a brutal position to be in. So, look, do you follow? Do you know who Jordan Peterson is? Canadian guy.
Vaguely. He likes to stir up some controversy from time to time.
I don't. So the thing is, I don't. Oh, they're nice glasses. Ooh, yeah. Look at that. Let's headphones. Oh, headphones are on. James is back online. Welcome back to the internet. Nice glasses, guys. James, you know who Jordan Peterson is?
Yeah, actually, he's interesting to listen to. I don't agree with everything that he says, but I like the way that he conducts debates.
I like the way that he thinks. So I was pretty much in line with a lot of what he said. I don't. So basically, the very liberal people are like, this guy's a right wing extremist, anti-Semitic and white supremacist. He's not.
No,
I don't think. I don't. And I think what brought him to really into the spotlight was he was a psychology professor, something along those lines.
yeah, he's a Canadian psychology professor. What got him the most amount of fame early on was
about 4 or 5 years ago.
Canada was proposing a law, something about like it was a trans rights law about how you have to call trans people by like a certain like pronoun or something like that. And what he was saying was, I don't have an issue with trans people being treated with respect, but I do have an issue with government mandating certain types of speech.
And he did a pretty good job in defending his point of view. And I don't think he's anti-trans. I don't think. I mean, maybe there are some people that are anti-trans, but for the most part, it's 2021. It's just legislating, language use. I told you a while back, James. I'm pretty sure we were on the podcast where I was listening to a different podcast, and they were telling a story about this woman who went out into basically in the mountains, and she set up shop out there, had her house, and she was trans, and they did this and they did that, and I got really confused in the story because they changed I don't know if they changed it or they're using it all along, but it's a long podcast, and they were talking about not how she did things out in the mountains or the wilderness, but how they did things out in the wilderness. And I was like, oh, and it was about like being alone, and they kept using the word they, and it took me really like 40 minutes into the podcast. I was so confused. I'm like, well, I'm really alone. Like, she's just
gender neutral pronoun.
She's just being a pussy. Like, she's not alone. It's her and her husband or girlfriend or whatever. And she's out in the wilderness. Like, I don't think it's that big of a fucking deal. It's not alone. And then it hit me halfway through the podcast. I think I actually listened to it twice because you listen to a podcast. Sometimes you're busy doing other stuff. Sometimes my podcast playlist rolls over and I catch them again. But I was really confused. And I'm not a big fan of the word they. Maybe it's probably if you're trans, it's probably better than he or she. But it also introduces some confusion. And I think maybe the biggest I think probably the biggest one would be, is they a plural word or a singular word, as in they are or they is?
Well, it's both now.
Well, now it's both, sure. And that's where it gets a bit confusing, if you ask me. And I don't know where Jordan Peterson was going with this. I think he was basically.
Well, he just got a lot of attention because he was fighting hard against the Canadian government for what in the United States would be a First Amendment violation of just regulating speech. And then he got a lot of attention, and a couple of the other viewpoints that he has so he's very big on tradition and kind of traditional roles.
Well, exactly. Very okay. Go ahead. Sorry.
And also and this is where the debate really gets kind of fiery, is his views on men's abilities and women's abilities, which is that he doesn't think that men are any more capable than women are, but that there are clear statistical trends for what men tend to be better at doing and what women tend to be better at doing.
Well, he's also
And
I've heard him. I've listened to hours of him, and I'm not even that deep into it. Him talking to Sam Harris, who Sam Harris is new to me. I didn't think I would like Sam Harris, but then I heard him talking with Jordan Peterson. Sam Harris is not very religious, or I think he might be Jewish. He was raised in the Jewish faith, Jewish traditionally, but Jordan Peterson is Christian and is a believer in God. I don't think Sam Harris is. So Jordan Peterson is basically kind of dragging everything back to a greater meaning, and he believes that there's some root in everything that's happening and how everything should be, gender roles and things like that, in a greater meaning in a religious realm.
Well, and that's where he gets problematic. But when he sticks to the data and he talks about how statistically, if you just do personality surveys and samples of just trends, you will see a clear divergence in terms of, like, for example, if you measure aggression, if you try and measure aggression, you'll find that, like, men are on the average significantly more aggressive than women.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that there aren't aggressive women or timid men, but on average, men are more aggressive than women.
Yeah.
The issue I have with the statistics that he pulls for that, though, is how are you measuring that, and how are you measuring the differences in the expectations we have for little boys and little girls? If you have a little boy who wants to play with a doll, he's going to catch some shit for that. Same thing, probably less so these days, but think about when we were growing up, about just the very, very gendered toys. You had the girls' aisle, you had the boys' aisle. So for the girls, they kind of have this expectation. In a similar vein, when you think about a lawyer in a courtroom, a male who's fiery, aggressive, cutthroat, goes right after the other side, he's a go-getter. You want him on your team. You have a female attorney who does the same thing, and all the other side's going to do is, what a bitch. So there's these really gendered expectations that we have. So when you measure aggression, you have to think about, when are we measuring it? How old are they when we're measuring it? And what influences have we impacted on them? What expectations for social behavior?
So, now you're
but
getting
here's
a socialization argument.
Hold up, though. Here's where I think, if you really listen to Jordan Peterson, I think, sorry, my phone keeps ringing, and that's part of the stream here. I think what Jordan Peterson is really kind of bringing to light is, yes, we have our ideals, and things would be great if everything was kind of glossed over and we could have this idealistic world where there's no issues. But at the end of the day, we do have however many thousands of years where there are gender roles, and where religion, tells you, and the majority of the world is religious. Religion tells you this is how it is, and we have to abide by those things, and that creates issues with our society as it's changed in the last 8 years, right? And that's, the last 8 years is fighting against centuries, millennia of how things have been.
But that's a weak argument. Because tradition,
but it's
what supports tradition?
What do you mean? What supports tradition?
What's
Tradition.
the argument for tradition?
I don't know. Habit.
Okay, so that's circular. The only real argument for tradition is that it's a tradition. Going back to our logical fallacies cast, we're using the conclusion as a premise to prove the conclusion.
All right, hold up. What episode was that, by the way? Logical fallacies, 70 something. If you haven't seen it, you should listen to it. Logical fallacies, great episode on SipTalk. James, could you kind of explain what logical fallacies are better than I can, faster than I can? Sorry.
One of the
Sure
two.
You can.
A logical fallacy is basically a shortcut in reasoning that allows you to make what appears to be a reasonable argument, but has a flaw in some manner that when you analyze it, will make it so that the argument's invalid.
Well,
So,
James, I took Russian in high school and you didn't. So you probably don't know what you're talking about because Russian is a very complex language.
so that's a red herring or an ad hominem or both.
Yeah, exactly. So the point is I think it's a really good episode to listen to, or just Google logical fallacies because that's.
But yeah, so the argument for tradition is that the tradition exists, and that's petitio principii, begging the question, saying, well, my conclusion is we should follow the tradition. Why should we follow the tradition? Because it's a tradition. So that's where Peterson loses me, is the argument for tradition. One of the things that I think is probably one of his strongest arguments is his argument about equal opportunity versus equal outcomes.
Okay, you delve into that a little more.
Well, and it usually gets lost in a sea of, he's argued against people that argue against him will say that he's being misogynistic, but when he sees like quotas for hiring women or forcing women to go into certain job roles or something like that, he looks at it as forcing an equal outcome and putting people that may not want to be in a certain role there. And he says we should make it available to anybody who seeks it, a given opportunity, but whether or not you are able to realize that opportunity should be based on your performance and your ability to execute the task. And he looks at one of his favorite examples is in countries like Sweden, they had programs that basically increase the opportunities for women to be in certain industry sectors or whatever. I you know what? Let me get back to you on this one because I don't remember it well enough to be able to talk about it intelligently.
Well,
but basically, he has a problem with quota systems and forcing equal outcomes. And you also can kind of get into this with the gender wage pay gap, where women earn less than men. And that's a demonstrable fact. But trying to say women should earn $1 for every dollar that men earn is forcing an equal outcome when there's a more complex set of data behind the reason for the difference between women and men earnings. And so just saying, well, we should pay women exactly the same as men loses a lot of the nuance of the issue.
Well, agreed. Because it's a very complex issue. I was reading an article last night, and this is why I wanted to bring it up was, is Jordan Peterson the dumb person, smart person?
No.
And I didn't think so. I really...
Joe Rogan is the dumb person, smart person.
Yeah, but also kudos to Joe Rogan for, look at Larry King. Larry King, God rest his soul. Larry King passed away recently. Larry King, and he's admittedly, he does no research. He has no idea who he's basically, he knows nothing about his guest, and he knows very little about the topic, and he just goes in and asks kind of the everyman question. He's been doing it long enough. He asks very good questions, but he knows very little about what's going on. He just asks solid, insightful questions.
Not always. There's a great YouTube clip of him interviewing a guy that does voice acting for cartoons. And he asked the dude, he says, so what are some of like your luxuries or whatever? And the guy says, I like a really good cup of coffee and like I'm really big into socks. I like having like expensive, really plush, comfortable socks. And Larry King says, a cup of coffee, nice socks, I get it and everything. But I'm talking like, what are some luxuries that you enjoy? Like a private jet or something like that. And the voice actor just goes back and says, Larry, I'm on DuckTales.
Here's another serial philanderer.
Is he?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Does he drug people like Bill Cosby?
No. And when it all came out,
people he'd like to watch them eat a sausage like Andrew Cuomo.
Yeah,
dude, Cuomo, holy crap.
We did Cuomo on Tuesday, so you know what, you should weigh in.
David, I'm curious. So, David, I'd really like to see you eat that whole sausage. Really turns me to watch. Really turns me on to watch people eat a dick.
It's weird. Someone's knocking at the apartment door here in sunny Sacramento. I have to go deal with that. It might be the gunshots again, 50 yards from my door, like Monday night. Cuomo, I think, is probably one of the most spectacular one-year turnarounds for a politician. You had him every single day last year, post-March, doing his pandemic briefings, in contrast to Trump and his team giving kind of crazy interviews at times in different press briefings.
Hold on one second. Well, let me pause you. I watched Cuomo, who was pretty much off the radar for me in New York City because we had our crazy-ass mayor. And so it was basically, for me, the mayor of New York City, who's effectively a state governor because New York City is a big city, and the president. And then Cuomo stepped up to bat for the state. And I'm watching Cuomo on TV every day because we didn't have much else to do. And I'm watching the president on TV every day. And Cuomo sounded like he knew what was happening, like his movements were calculated. Everything sounded educated and very kind of in line with what you would do if you were put in a position to make a difficult decision where both outcomes were kind of crappy. But you were choosing the best of the two crappy outcomes, and
not the bleach.
I like sunshine.
And then it just kept going day by day by day by day that this guy got on TV, and his brother is in the news. His brother's
Chris Cuomo.
Chris Cuomo.
CNN.
He's a CNN affiliate or something like that. What is he?
He has his own show.
Okay, so he's got a news show. His brother's on the news every single day. Andrew Cuomo, on the other hand, is not. He's sitting in Albany behind some solid oak, signing shit, and it just happens. You don't see him or hear from him as often, but he's there. Now he's in front of you every day, and you're watching the difficult decisions being made as they're being made, and you're feeling the shitty outcomes. And then he just kind of doubles down on everybody being safe, and half of the majority of the state is suffering. And there may not be a better answer, but you're watching him make decisions that fuck people hard. And that was the last 12 months. So, David.
Well, that's the thing. Like you said, he was being an actual leader in that point where he
was being a leader. Yeah.
He was owning the shit.
Especially in contrast, very much at the time to Trump, who was not leading, who was not making decisions.
Quote, I take zero responsibility. Horrible. In any case, in the last 12 months, I don't think you have seen a bigger fall from grace. In the last 12 months, I mean, if you go back to Anthony Weiner, that's a pretty hilarious fall from grace as well. But you have the nursing home.
We can even stick with newer governors.
Oof, another show. Because we could do a whole one. I was in the state capitol when the coup happened back in 2010. Another story. You had the big scandal about the Cuomo administration admitting that they hid the numbers on nursing home deaths. That's not a good look, especially when you had harped on your transparency this entire time. Second, you've got one accusation, two accusations, and the third one to me has the photographic evidence to back it up. I can't remember her name off the top of my head. I think she's about 32.
I'll be right back. I'll be in earshot. I'm going to get my Glenlivet. It's on the other side of that basement here.
Perfect.
Sorry.
Well, you had it's a 32-year-old woman. She met Mr. Cuomo at a wedding, and there's a picture where he has his arms on her shoulders. And if you cannot see the absolute disgust and uncomfortableness that this woman has in that moment, because it was after he had put his hand on the small of her back and she moved it away, and then you see him kind of like holding her. If you've ever seen that look as a guy, you need to get the hell away from there, because you have just made someone extremely uncomfortable. Whether or not that was your intention, you need to get the hell out, because you have just stepped in it hard and expect to hear about it later. Yeah, so I think Cuomo in the last year has completely torpedoed any potential for future office because one, his apology the last couple of days was bullshit.
Oh,
And
sometimes I like making jokes.
Yeah, that's a nice way to justify and acknowledge and tacitly admit that you've sexually harassed people and knew that it was inappropriate. Look, you're the governor of one of the largest states, one of the most important states in the country. You need to keep your shit on the level.
What bottle is that?
It's not Glenlivet. It's Glenfiddich. It's a 15.
Is that the Solera Reserve?
Oh shit! It's not even open. Oh, it's an 8.
Because the Glenfiddich 15 is fantastic.
Oh, this is the 18, James.
I prefer 15.
Have you had the 18?
Kevin.
Yeah.
Old bad 14.
I don't know. I feel bad for the guy.
Why?
Why? Because he's getting called out for the things that he did and is facing consequences for his actions.
Again, you know,
I see myself in him.
You do. I do not. He has hair.
He's a sympathetic character.
He has hair. I do not.
I know this is all just projection. I could be that guy sometime. Imagine just
No. Ooh, this is a nice. I'm not gonna have too much, but I am out of Negroni, which is a nice drink.
Keep in mind, this is the kid of Mario Cuomo. He has been in a life of privilege his entire life.
Well,
and he's entitled to these things, and he feels that. And you can see it in the picture I was just mentioning. He feels like when that woman took his arm off of her body, said, "No, I deserve this. Why is she doing that? I have every right to be doing this." And then you see him holding her by the shoulders, and she is just like back like this, like, why is he touching me?
That's the thing about reading body language, and I feel, I don't know. I feel, you know, James and I are probably more socially awkward than you, David, but it's very difficult to read body language.
You haven't seen me in a while.
and to read people. And I just, you know, I feel bad. So right now, I've always sympathized with the guy that like goes in for the kiss or the guy that like, you know, asks for the number and gets declined. But now what's coming to the forefront is the girl going, well, he asked for my number and I was it was really, really uncomfortable for me. So I gave it to him. And then he texts me and I don't know what to do. I feel like it's harassment. Well, look, dick, you gave me your fucking number. But I sympathize with the guy that asks for the number and doesn't get it, or the guy that I don't think I've ever gone in. Maybe I have. I don't know. Going in for a kiss and not gotten it. But that's more embarrassing on the guy part, I imagine, than the girl part. And
yeah, she looks horrified.
These are two completely separate things you're talking about here. Look, you're on a date and you go in for the kiss and you miscalculate. That's different.
What if it's not a date?
Then that's different.
But it's a congressional event.
Here's the analogy: is you go in for the kiss and she pulls away, and instead you go in and say, you know what? Well, I'm just going to go in anyway and hug her nice and deep and then kiss her on the cheek. That's what he's doing here. Take a look at the link that I just sent.
I did.
Put the picture. I know James did, but Justin, take a look.
Is this a video that you sent? Because I'd love.
It's just a picture. There was only the picture. From the news
well, let me see if I can throw this on the camera here. Unwanted advantage. Let's see. All right. Well, shit. Somebody took a picture in that moment.
Someone read the body.
I have an ad blocker on, so it disappeared.
Yeah, tell me, Justin, have you never seen that reaction? No,
not that reaction. Also, I'm not 63 years old, so I don't know. I'd love to actually discuss more about Jordan Peterson. I'd like to.
We need to do more research on it.
Yeah, let's have some research on it.
I like the way the guy thinks. I think he's a little hung up on religion. But listening to him, you know, I'm not. No, I don't. David, you religious?
No.
Yeah. Okay. So
James and I are Jewish by heritage. It's more of a cultural thing for us to, throw back to our family's roots. But we don't attend temple, and we're not practicing. We're not kosher. We're not.
I know that, but I think Jordan Peterson really gets hung up on there's a greater power, and he believes in some depth of Christianity that greater power exists. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I don't agree with that at all. But I really see what he's kind of hanging on to. And it was difficult listening, because I've listened to a lot of Jordan Peterson. And I really respect the way he thinks, because he said he wrote a book, and he wrote every sentence of the book like 5 times, because he needed to make sure that every way his thought could be perceived fit with every other thought, and it made the most sense, and it couldn't be argued one way or the other. And that's a great way to think, and also it means you must have an insane amount of free time. But
let's talk about him once we've had a chance to brush up on his work, so that way we're not just conjecturing.
Sure, I think that's fair enough. So I'm about to order his book, but I'm not going to read it. So I'll order the book. I'll order the hardcover.
True man of principle.
I'll order the hardcover book and then download the audio book. Is probably my plan.
It's probably above your reading level. I'll order you a hop on pop.
100%.
The audiobook or the hardcover?
Oh my god, you guys
audiobook, a hop on pop. You might be able to follow along.
You guys are too smart for 2021. You don't understand the pain of the everyman when we run into a word that we can't double tap and hit the lookup button. And then
but you can talk to girls. So this is a trade-off here. I read, you get laid. So
but like
yeah, I read books, you read the room.
Body language.
Practice.
Going right to stage 3. We're screw stage 1 and 2. We're just right to stage 3.
Well, ultimately you got to round the bases at the end of the day. But
no. This is a completely different. This is a different scale.
I'm talking about the evolution of the human species, James. I'm talking about continued generations.
And that goes to James's point earlier about why can't they kill themselves before the gender reveal accident? Because they've already conceived. Like, that baby's coming.
Yeah, I mean, unless they're able to get the wife too.
That's even worse.
What?
And this is why. So when you're like, oh yeah, I'm on the spectrum a little bit. This is when you need to double down and be like, yeah, I'm retarded. you can't. I know that was hurtful for many people, but I am retarded.
But you can choose whether or not to listen to me.
Yes, a lot of people have.
You can choose whether or not to take me seriously. I certainly don't.
Oh man,
people can vote with their feet.
We're getting fucked. I think probably in the comments are a lot of laughing faces and sign outs. So actually, it's funny because I try to watch the comments and you don't see the sign outs, but you see the viewer count. You see the viewer count drop.
Your approach to podcasting is like my approach to property values, because I'm looking at the property values around the house that I'm about to buy. And what I really want to see happen is that as soon as I move into this place, I just want to see the property values within a 1 block radius just fucking plummet.
Why? Why is that?
Because
he wants the power.
Yeah, I want to say that I made a mark in the world.
Well,
James is the kind of guy who puts M&Ms and Skittles into the community candy bowl at the office just to watch the world burn.
It is a brilliant idea, but
it's kind of
funny. But here's my thing:
you can find some colored mints.
Because I moved into a neighborhood. There's no HOA, and that's cool. Happy about that. I didn't even know about that stuff before we started talking about it. It just never occurred to me. But
real estate agent. I never heard of HOAs.
I've heard of them. It didn't occur to me when I was buying because I'm in New York City. So it's like a foreign fucking thing. It's like, I didn't know you had to fucking change elephant hoofs, like fucking horse feet. Like that wasn't, I don't know. Horses have horseshoes. Horses have horseshoes.
Okay, you led with elephants.
But if I was in India, I would be like, oh, the elephants are just walking around. And then some.
Yeah, but the elephants don't wear shoes.
And then an Indian guy would be like, no, we got to change their elephant shoes.
They don't wear shoes.
Well, but you don't know that how much time you spent with the elephants.
As much as you have.
Exactly, that's my point. So I don't expect the elephants to wear shoes either. But apparently, in my hypothetical.
And also, what are elephants doing in New Jersey?
Dolphins.
Elephants.
Oh, there's no elephants. Yeah.
You better make the first shot count, because otherwise you're just gonna make her mad.
Yeah, I'm about to buy a crossbow to hunt deer in my backyard. I don't want to have a gun so the neighbors don't freak out, but I definitely want a crossbow. I don't know. I don't know what I would do with a deer when I aired it.
You might want to think this one through.
But I would YouTube it, and then I have a big grill, so I think I would figure it out.
I would just take it to a deer processor and make.
Also, what's your plan for when the arrow misses?
You just got, then you have an extra
arrow. Or misses the heart and goes through the deer. Now you're just up. Fuck, there goes an arrow.
And here comes a really angry deer.
That deer's not gonna. I'll be in the living room with the window open. He's not gonna But so, James, David, I don't think you were around for this. James, you may have been when we were kids. Maybe not. Maybe it was just me and the neighbor, Chris. We used to take the bow and arrow and shoot it straight up. Were you there for that? We also used to douse tennis balls in gasoline and play tennis.
Oh, I was there for that. Yeah, I was the progenitor of that idea.
I don't know what it was with gasoline. I think probably the first time that we brought gasoline up to the bonfire, and then we were lighting shit like left and right with gasoline, and then the Gatorade bottle. So we used to break into the garage, not break in, but we go to the garage, and there was 5-gallon tanks of gasoline, and we take the gasoline tanks and we fill up Gatorade bottles, and we bring the Gatorade bottles back to the back
tennis can.
Or a tennis can. The tennis ball can comes with 3 balls, so we take Gatorade bottles and the can of the tennis balls came in. We bring them out to the backyard. We have a little bonfire back there, and then we just do shit with the gasoline. But I think once we were lighting shit on fire, and then the gasoline container, the tennis ball container or a Gatorade container fell over, and it spilled across our picnic table. And then we were like, oh, it just kind of lit up fast, and then it kind of went out. When we realized gasoline has got a short burn life, and I think then we just got crazy with the gasoline and started lighting shit on fire left and right, lighting each other on fire. You pour gasoline down your arm, light the gasoline on fire, shake that shit off, smother it with your t-shirt or whatever.
So Justin, why don't you have hair?
It has nothing to do with gasoline.
Maybe you should start telling that story instead.
I like it better. It's a lot edgier.
Yeah.
It's a lot more white trash here, and
no, you got to lead into it, man.
We grew up at a high school that had 85 kids in our graduating classes. We're not trash, but we're from the neighborhood.
No.
Yeah, also, we went to a high school where the first day of hunting season, 2/3 of the class was out.
I think that was before our grade. I could be wrong. I don't know. I was really focused on physics and mathematics.
I recall.
Yeah. What was your grade in physics?
I don't know, probably a C. But I showed up. I actually, I remember having, I think it was earth science, and I slept through almost every single class. I still got a B, but it was first period. In first period, that's the thing, is having a class at 7:40 a.m. I can tell you it was a real person in the real world. That's not a thing. If I had to pluck anybody from the real world and be like, hey, look, I need you to pay attention for 40 minutes between 7:40 and 8:20, and then I'm going to test you on it. That's not my expectations for that test are very, very low. It just doesn't
I
matter.
remember in earth science, I was also in first period, and I had my head down. I wasn't sleeping. I was listening, but it was just too early for me to have my eyes open. And so, did you have Spiro?
I did, yeah.
So Spiro would be talking about whatever earth science stuff or whatever, and then he'd ask a question to the class to see if people were paying attention. And so I just have like my head down like this on the desk. He'd ask the
Puts
question.
her head
I-
down on a desk. Yeah.
I raise my hand. He'd call on me. I'd give the right answer, and then I'd put my head back down. And everyone in the class is like, "We hated you because we thought you were sleeping the
Well,
entire time."
you looked like you were asleep. Yeah, if you had your head down in the class, you
Yeah,
looked like you were asleep.
Yeah.
Man, so I have a lot of meetings. Not a lot. I have meetings in my office, and I watch people where they do this thing where and I hate this because I'm giving the meeting, so I'm obviously 110% engaged in every fucking essence of what's happening. And I watch, and so I'm there. I'm like, as far as any reason, sort of like coked up, like I'm in, there's no more in the moment, right? And then I watch people. I'm energetic, and I watch people, and they're like,
Should throw something at them.
It's infuriating from a presenter standpoint.
Yeah, well, and
You're saying you don't give a shit about what I clearly do.
yeah, well, but also I was on a Zoom meeting yesterday or the day before, and they were covering all this shit, and I was like, guys, like I didn't say like I'm tired and I'm paying attention to this shit, but I'm like, this is a lot of information. I can't retain it all. It's not going to happen. I'll hit you guys up soon. When I run into these issues, I will hit you guys up. I'll ask you questions. It's too much for me right now. I appreciate you running through all 82 bullet points. I won't remember. I'll remember 4 bullet points, probably the first 4. That's it. I feel like we have digressed a little bit. What am I missing? Bring us back on track. James, you're
We were talking
Cosby?
about tolerance and Dr.
Yeah.
Seuss to start off the evening. So
So
you want to
as
circle back around?
Well,
as normal, we end up on being boring in meetings.
being boring. Well, this is
And being
this is our weekly
podcast.
weekly Zoom meeting. No, I mean, I just think, I want to draw a clear line between Bill Cosby and Andrew Cuomo. I think
Which is what you think of when you think of Dr. Seuss.
No, Dr. Seuss is.
I don't think that drawing a clear line between Bill Cosby and anyone is terribly beneficial to the person that isn't Bill Cosby in this situation. Like, hey, you're not Bill Cosby. Like, ooh.
And also, if you're
that's not
around Bill
strong
Cosby, you're
endorsement.
not seeing many clear lines. They're all kind
I'm
of
not seeing much.
No.
Fucking A. But
I didn't drug people and sleep with them. That's his problem.
Yeah, why are you mad at me about this?
But I think you have. It's a tiered. It's first off.
So are we defending Bill Cosby now?
No,
Sounds like it.
We're using Bill Cosby as a weighted side of the spectrum here. You got Bill Cosby, you got Weinstein. Weinstein's got more power but less drugs. Cosby's got more drugs but less power. Good guy's got a sweater vest, but really not a good guy because he's got the drugs, right? And then
the drugs are a problem, but it's really the drugs in combination with the rape. I think that's really where
it's what he does with the drugs, because there's plenty of good guys with drugs.
Yeah.
Well, I think if you watched a lot of Dr. Seuss, Whoville type movies, and you're on mushrooms or something, that'd be much more entertaining than being fucked by Bill Cosby.
Yeah, I wouldn't be terribly happy to come out of it was Quaaludes. It was Quaaludes that he would drug people with. So I don't really want to come out of Quaalude trip. And
I know
the two of you should really listen to Jim Jeffries' bit on Bill Cosby.
I know very little about drugs. I know very little about Bill Cosby. I know we made a lot of Jello shots in high school and in early college years. And that was fun.
What does that have to do with Bill Cosby?
Jello. He had the Jello jigglers.
Okay. But did you put Quaaludes into yours? And then did you sleep with women that you dosed? I think these are different scenarios.
In high school, I went many years not getting laid. and Jello shots supplied. I watched a lot of movies growing up. So I thought like you could be cool, and then you could just go to your room and because David, I don't know if you knew this, but in high school, and the years afterwards, my mom moved out of the house. She bought a house in the countryside, and she moved out of the house. So I had, and in retrospect, retard, my part. So I thought it'd be cool to just be cool, and then you would go to your room. And I left the door cracked open always. And I was like,
Tonight's the night someone comes in.
yeah, I'm gonna like say some cool shit. I'm gonna like drop a handful of like some cool ass one-liners. And we got a party at my house. There's like 30 people here or so. And it's 1:00 in the morning, and I got college online courses tomorrow at 2:00. So I gotta be well rested. I'm gonna intermingle with the party. I'm gonna say some cool shit, really cool shit, and then I'm gonna go to my room at the end of the hallway. I'm not gonna close the door. I'm gonna leave the door like 3 inches open. And if this is a movie, obviously I don't know shit in life. I'm thinking what I know from movies, so I'm like, I'm gonna leave the door open 3 inches, and 14 minutes later, I'm probably realistically like in my mind, like 7 minutes later, some girl's gonna push the door open. I'll be half asleep, and she's gonna be like, "Oh, hey, Justin, did you really meant what you said?" And can I sit down? And then one thing leads to another, and then it's a great sexual relationship.
She
then we get married,
ball.
and then we get married and have a family. Because that's what I knew.
That at the party, the only girl that was going to walk into that room was someone who was so drunk that she mistook it for the bathroom and then vomits on your bedspread.
Exactly. But I grew up watching a lot of movies, so I didn't know. I didn't realize that there was a difference, and that was a thing. I knew that if you wait in isolation, wantingly, shit's gonna happen. If you wait in
this sounds like Eric logic.
It is, because Eric and I both watch a lot of movies. So if you
watch
wait
the
in
same
isolation,
movies.
It's the same thing as like you get in an argument with your parents. Your parents punish you, right? and then they banish you to your room. And ultimately, it's going to happen. Your parents are like, "Go to your room," and it's early. It's 6:30. They're like, you're eating dinner and you're not about to eat Brussels sprouts, and they're like, "Fuck you, go to your." They're gonna say, "Fuck you." You're gonna say, "Look, you need to eat vegetables," and you're like, "I don't want to eat vegetables," and they're like, "Leave the table, go to your room." Now, in a movie or a TV show, the parent shows up to the bed and they sit and they pat your knee, and they're like, "Hey, pal, I just got a bit excited because I know Brussels sprouts are good for you, and I just want the best for you, and pal, I'm in your corner." But in reality, they just send you to the room because like they want nothing to do with you, and they're like, "This motherfucker doesn't eat shit, and he just wants to."
Not unlike the women that went to your parties.
They just want to be done with you. Oh, thank God. He went down to the end of the hallway. Fuck. You didn't close the door? All right. Don't be loud. You might wake up and come back.
So I just saw James, Nicole Feliciano. She just joined Cocogram. What I want to do is we need a little more female presence. We're going to hit some parenting topics in the future podcast. We are at the end of episode 82. Sticks and stones might break your bones if you're the youngest of the Boswell
That was the topic for tonight?
Yeah, it was. It was.
Allegedly.
Well, I'm sorry if you guys didn't end up with a broken femur,
What? That's not the bone you want to break. No, that was tibia, fibula.
Tibia.
Either way,
Probably a whole bunch of small ankle bones.
Maybe in the future, James and I will bring on our mutual friend Eric, who rocked his ankle, and there's a lot of bones in your ankle, and he did some major damage.
That's one of my favorite stories of all time.
All
I'm
right.
just going to. I'm going to preface it by I came into school one day, and Justin's walking up to his locker, and he looks like he got 3 hours of sleep after a 12-round boxing match. And like, dude, what in the world were you doing last night? I was in the hospital all last night with Eric, and the story gets better from there.
We broke his ankle. He slipped on dog shit. He broke his ankle. Slipped on
It's
dog
even
shit.
better than that, though.
Broke his ankle.
There's some fury about McDonald's not being delivered.
Yeah.
He was going. I don't want to talk shit. It's one of my best friends. He was going. Long story
Power
short,
through it.
I'm gonna deliver it the most respectful
Yeah.
way.
What about you and Scott and the things that you were doing before all of this?
Well, we were cleaning his room. We were cleaning his bedroom.
Who and how appreciative was he of this?
So, look. Don't goad me into this. All right.
That's you just opened the door.
So,
3 inches. I'm walking through it.
our friend had a messy bedroom. We're cleaning it. He needed the TV in his bedroom broke, so we were putting a new TV in. It's a nice TV, and he didn't want to help. So he said, I'm leaving." So he left the house, slipped on dog shit on his way to McDonald's, and broke his ankle. End of story.
You are underselling it by orders of magnitude.
We will delve into the story by orders of magnitude in a future podcast. I promise you. And that's why you need to subscribe and listen to every minute of this podcast, because it gets, we got some good shit. And James, we have not actually even talked. We haven't even broached the subject of the steps to you buying the house and the bid accepted. Everything's good on that so far. It's cruising.
Hey, I'm hands off at this point. I've done what I need to do. Loans and underwriting. The property appraisal's been paid for, and some dude's going to need to go out there and look at the house, and money's in the agent's hand for the earnest money. So at this point, it's let all the paper pushers do their thing, and at some point I'll have a house. And I would say that like all of this is going away, but it's just going to be rearranged in a larger space.
I hope it's rearranged. Just a white wall.
But so I can look like I'm in an interrogation room.
I'll get there. I have a whole set of minds, a vision right now in the workout / bar room. But it'll get there. Down
No,
here.
I already have a bar.
No, so do I, dick.
Yeah, I didn't have to build mine. It's coming with the house.
No, it's coming out. All right. Well, all right, guys. This concludes episode 82. I cannot wait for episode 83, 84. Going to bring David Boswell, political scientist, back. Even though he exists in the past, right?
Past. I'm in your past.
Really a shame.
Until the Earth spins enough to get me back to where
Earth isn't going fast. The Earth is not going fast enough for California to catch up to New York. So I'm going to drag my little mouse that everybody can see if they're watching us live onto the end button, and I will catch you guys next time. Adios, motherfuckers.
Adios.
Peace.
See ya.
All right, that is the show. Thank you for joining. See you next time.
I like PBR. I just got priced out of it.